Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're with us today. So we're going to be talking to Natalie Vardabasso. She is an educational leader, author, speaker, and entrepreneur who has founded 2 impact-driven companies, Unleash Yes and the Canadian Assessment Center, both rooted in reimagining what's possible in education. She is a former instructional coach and assessment lead. Natalie now works with schools and districts across North America, while also supporting educators who are ready to step into thoughtful leadership and build meaningful learning-based businesses. She is also the co-author of Rehumanizing Assessment, a book that anchors all of her work into one core belief: when we center humanity, clarity, and purpose, both students and educators thrive. With that, let's get to Natalie.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. Okay, so I'm just like so excited to talk about this topic because sometimes the topics that I talk about like apply to me personally, where
Yeah.
I'm like, I love this because like, yes, I grew up in that, or just like I want to avoid that for my kids. And so it feels very personal. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here to help us out. Okay,
I'll try my best.
so yes, yeah. I mean, we're all just doing our best. So this is
We're
amazing.
accidental experts, right?
Yes, exactly. I'm still accidentally an expert, and I'm not sure I'd say an expert. I mean, they say 10 years makes you an expert, but
Yeah.
I'm still learning so much. The more I
Yeah.
know, the more I realize I don't know.
Oh, facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yes. Okay, so let's talk about like so many of us learn to be good, right? By maybe becoming like who we think our parents want us to be, or who we think society wants us to be, or
Mm.
right, this idea of being like good or good enough. Um, do you find that that's true? And if so, like, how do you think that starts?
Yes, 1000%. I feel like there is this mythical good out there that
Mhm.
all of us are being conditioned into constantly. I would also add that there's an added layer from an identity perspective for us women. I think when
Mm.
we're little girls, there is a lot of pressure to be that good girl.
Yes.
And that often means being, they talk about sugar, spice, and everything nice. We have all these little sayings
Yes.
around girls. And so
Mhm.
you learn very, very quickly that it's your job to be the helper. It's your
Mhm.
job to make your parents' lives easier. You're
Yes.
supposed to be very obedient. You're supposed to be very quiet. Um, and then there's pressures that can exacerbate that. Like in my story, the story that connected us, I was the second child born after an older brother who had severe mental and physical disabilities. And I've
Mhm.
since learned there's a whole psychological syndrome called glass child syndrome, for which this
Yes.
becomes like 10 times amplified
Mhm.
because your parents are so focused on caring for their other child who has all of these special needs that
Mhm.
you definitely need to be the one that doesn't draw any focus whatsoever. You
Mhm.
have to just be almost like the other parent in the equation.
Mhm.
So you learn very, very early on that your job is not to do anything that kids are supposed to do, which is be loud and messy and make mistakes and have big feelings. Like you just have to
Mhm.
push that all down and be good.
Yeah. Yeah. Why do you think that pattern happens in childhood? Like for girls, I'm
Mm.
obviously we know there's the sayings and stuff, but like why especially with girls do we have that?
Historical patterns. I'm going to say the
Mhm.
P word, and I know there's someone listening right now that's going to roll their eyes and be like, "Oh, this woke chick." But like, there is a patriarchal society that we
Sure.
live in. It's
Yeah.
not a matriarchal society, and as a result, men are positioned as kind of the center. They're
Mhm.
the ones upon which all of our societal structures have been built, and so we are kind of considered the secondary, the helper, and so
Mhm.
there's a role that you have to then fit into. And I've got to say that when I mention the patriarchy, men that understand or have read about any of these like critical theories, they get that these structures harm us all because it also
Mhm.
puts young boys in a box in
Sure.
which, you have to be the leader, you have to be the doer, and you're not to have any feelings. Like, you got to tamp those down. You need to start to learn how to be a man. And so there's boxes that I think we're both put into that aren't things that we've chosen for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to be honest with you, I think, as I've looked into this for myself and for my clients and just doing work in general, I mean, I don't think I thought a lot about the patriarchy, to be honest with you. It wasn't something that came across my mind, but then there are things where I'm like, well, why is that like that? And then why is that like that? And then I do research and I'd be like, oh, well, it's built because of, many hundreds and hundreds of years ago, whatever was put in place. And at that time, things were like this. And we really, in some ways, have not progressed that far from where we began. Right. And so, I mean, I think that it's time for change.
It's liberating. I think it's liberating to learn about these things. And I know that there is a part in the journey. Like, the first time I even heard these words was like 4th year university. I took a diversity class because literally it was the only thing that fit in my timetable. I didn't care much about it, being this girl from like a really small town who went to the city for university.
Yeah.
And the first time I learned about these things, I was angry. I was like, that's ridiculous, And then the more you actually start to interrogate your own life and the ways that you're subscribing to these things, and then how it's causing these feelings of not enoughness, it makes you be like, wait, I can choose not to subscribe to these criteria and these boxes. Like, there is a different way of thinking and being. And then I think that's actually a very liberating way to start thinking about life.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not an attack on men. I mean, it's just that the society is built in such a way. So I think I absolutely agree with you. But I think when people hear patriarchy, I know like lots of people have an emotional charge to it. But I really came at it with like, I didn't have a feeling. And then the more I found out, I was like, oh, yeah, no, I don't like that. Like, I want it to be balanced and equal and, like, to both genders and all people to be included and valued, for sure. So, okay. So what do you think are subtle ways that especially well-intentioned parents, like, I don't think anybody goes into parenting and they're like, you know what I want to do? I want to screw this kid up. Like, I'm just like, so like, I work so hard to get them here and I really want things to be complicated. But well-intentioned parents might teach children, but I think especially girls, to disconnect from their true selves.
It's when they're disconnected from their true selves. Like, everything becomes an act of modeling and just passing down the type of way that you're showing up and living your life. So if you're someone who isn't connected to your own emotional states and you've learned to just stay busy and tamp everything down and to not really live into your human experience, then you're not going to be able to sit beside a child who's having their emotional experience and co-regulate with them, which through the research of like Dr. Jody Carrington and others, we found is the number one thing that has to be present for independent self-regulation to happen. You have to have this childhood context of being able to co-regulate, but you can't co-regulate if you can't self-regulate. So then it's like the whole pattern just continues. And then we all learn these maladaptive coping mechanisms. Like, as you get older, you numb through social media is a big one now, right? It's easier just to scroll and go down the TikTok rabbit hole than it is to face your shit. I hope I can swear. I didn't ask you that before.
Go for it. Yeah.
It's easier to grab a glass of wine or 3 or a bottle than something. It's easier just to throw yourself into work and be chronically busy 24/7. Like, all these habits that we all have to not deal with the things that are causing us those negative emotions and the patterns that lead to the emotion. So long story short, it's like, if you can't self-regulate, if you can't be in touch with your true self, then you're not going to be able to create the conditions for someone else to do it. It always starts with us.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking about, like, I love co-regulation is something that I don't feel like happened in my childhood. My parents, I don't think, were taught how to regulate. And so then there wasn't much co-regulating. So like, we're the first people teaching that to our children. And sometimes it's still hard for me, even though I'm a therapist and I know all the things. And like, there are times where I have a button pushed and like recently I've been like, this is a test. I don't know, for some reason that like really helps me ground. To be like, I'm being tested right now to see if I can stay regulated. And then
Mhm.
it like, I don't know, there's something in my body that changes because like I'm a recovering perfectionist. And so
Mhm.
I like getting A's on tests and things like that really speaks well to me. So I'm like, it helps me to stay in that moment and stay grounded for my kiddos because I think, it's interesting. We have 4 kids and the older 3 have done really like they've been able to manage their feelings better and maybe we're in a different place with parenting them, but our youngest one is challenging. He has big
Mhm.
feelings all of the time. And so like thinking like co-regulating with him is sometimes hard. And so I empathize with
Mhm.
parents that like it's not like as perfect. Like you see the little cartoons, which I love, of like the kid who's the flame and then the parent is like sitting with him and then he's like turning back into himself and you're just like, oh, I love that. But sometimes it's hard to be
Mhm.
that parent to
Mhm.
like sit in it.
Mhm.
What
It's
advice do you
so
have
hard.
for that?
Ugh. Well, I'm not a parent. I should clarify for anyone
Yeah, that's
listening.
okay. Yes.
Um, and so I totally recognize without the lived experience of being a parent. I've spent my career in education, and this is like the trigger I'd feel when people are like, "Well, this is what teachers should do," and I'm like, "Oh, easy for you to say. Just because you had a
Yes.
teacher doesn't mean, you know." So I'm trying not
Yes.
to be that person at all right now. But if I can pull from my experience being an entrepreneur,
Yes.
because growing multiple businesses, I've learned firsthand that when we say the word self-care in today's culture, I feel like that
Hmm.
word's almost been co-opted to just mean like opting out. Like, you don't have to do the hard things,
Hmm.
just buy yourself something, drink some wine, like
Hmm.
these are, as we know, as we just talked about, those are often numbing behaviors. So
Yes.
true self-care means like, what's the hard things that you're avoiding that you need to invest in so that you really are feeling better? And for
Mm,
me, my businesses changed dramatically when I got my sleep under control. When I
yeah.
stopped just like, one of my friends who's brilliant in this space, she often says like, we have these fuck-its that we all just like embrace, and it's like you have to find them and quit them. So it's like,
Hmm.
fuck it, I'm not going to work out this week, I'm too busy. It's like, no, you're going
Hmm.
to work out because it's critical for your mental clarity and for your ability to stay present. And if you don't do that, everything else in your business is going to suffer. And I mean, if we kind of pull from that, I think it's very similar with parenting. If you go, oh fuck it, I got too much going on, I got the kids that got to get to all their activities, I'm just so
Hmm.
swamped, I don't have time for the gym. Oh, I can't sleep. I got to do a bunch of things tonight before I get up in the morning to drive the kids
Hmm.
somewhere. Like, and you just constantly start eroding all those things that are things you have to commit to actually feel well and be present
Hmm.
and be calm. Then you can't intellectually push yourself into the work that needs to happen. Like, if your
Sure.
body is just not online,
Hmm.
your prefrontal cortex, if you will not like be able to get there and do that co-regulation. You
Yeah.
need to be investing in like the wholeness of your wellness.
Yep.
That's what I've found, at least.
Yeah. No, I think that's great advice because I know that there are times where I have like a lot of things like my foundational pieces in line, right? Like my sleep
Mhm.
and my eating and
Mhm.
exercise and like time by myself and time with my kids and time with my
Mhm.
spouse and like these
Mhm.
different buckets that I have, right? That and they're
Mhm.
all feeling really imbalanced and then something happens like somebody gets sick, right?
Mhm.
And then it's like everybody is going to get sick. Like I don't know
Mhm.
how you like you can't Lysol the kid, I heard. No, I'm just teasing.
Yeah,
But like,
you can
you're
try.
Lysol around them and bathing them and all the things to keep all of their germs to themselves, but inevitably will get sick. And then it's like this domino thing. And then it's like the sleep falls out, right? Because I've been woken up every night 3 times at least, right? Like it's that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And then those kind of supports fall out. And then I find myself like, then my eating kind of goes out of whack because I'm like really tired.
Mhm.
And so then I grab
Mhm.
for sugar things and then, right. Like,
Mhm.
and then it's like everything falls. And then you're like, oh my gosh, how did we get this far down the path of
Mhm.
not wellness? So I absolutely agree. And I know that parenting is hard, but like us taking care of ourselves, like I can tell
Is
a
is
difference. Like
is parenting.
it
Just like
truly
we always
is.
say to our clients, like going to so we've just recently rejigged our schedule because we were not making it to the gym the way we wanted to, my partner and I. So
Uh-huh.
we rejigged it. So like we go at 6:30 every day, like non-negotiable, right when you wake up, get your ass to the gym.
Yeah.
And it's been the greatest business strategy we've ever tried, because our energy for creating, for content, for sales, like for everything we have to do is so high throughout the day. We sleep great at night. And so it's like, I think sometimes parents can see these things as taking away from parenting. I think especially
Yeah.
moms, like I
Mm-hmm.
think of my mom who's since passed away, but she really had that mindset that being a mom meant self-sacrifice. Like
Yes.
you need to be giving of yourself for others all day, every
Mm-hmm.
day. And I mean, she got sick. She got cancer, and we thought we beat it, and then it came back. But like I sometimes look at her life, and that was a big wake up call for me with everything. Like self-sacrifice kind of checks a box in the moment, but like
Mm-hmm.
I'm now living the most of my life without my mother. Like I would have
Yeah.
much preferred she slowed down. She took lots of time for herself. You know, she really
Mm-hmm.
invested in her self-care and didn't work so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think in the acute moments, it feels like you're taking away from your kids. Like I can't
Yeah.
speak to it. I guess only you can, but like to take time and go to the gym, or I'm going to read, like I'm going to read a book,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or like you
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm going to spend time on my own. You know, like I think I saw a funny TikTok of this dad talking to his kid, and he's like, oh, this is mom's alone time that I've since found out we need to give her. And it was kind of like a haha, but I'm also like, that shouldn't be funny. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's that we're not just tiptoeing around people. It's like what people deserve these things.
Yeah.
Like
To
all
take up
people, no matter if
space.
you're a parent or not.
Yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Well, and it is hard. I think as moms, like we do struggle to find the balance between taking care of ourselves and taking care of the kids, and like because like when they're first born, I breastfed, and so like I was the milk factory, right? Like
Mm,
all of the nourishment came from me. And it's not that my husband,
mhm.
I mean, if he could have breastfed, I don't know that he would. I've never asked him, but like, maybe. But it was like you couldn't there wasn't a bottle to give because it was
Yeah.
just here, right? And so it's like when I think even in the circumstances where you don't breastfeed, I think it's you just have like you grew this baby, and so like you have this like responsibility, or like
Yeah.
you took on this child. And so I think socially we kind of socialize women to be like the self-sacrificing and
Mhm.
caretakers, and
Mhm.
um that's not always who we are. And it doesn't I agree with like that is good parenting, is taking care of ourselves. And
Mhm.
I've gotten to the point where sometimes I'll be like, mommy's going to her room for an hour, and I'm like, I'll set a timer for you. And then I set a
Yeah.
timer, and then I'm like, and I'm locking my door, and
Yeah.
then I lock my door because then nobody comes in. Because
Mhm.
because otherwise it's like I can be interrupted 500 times during that time, and then I
Mhm.
don't get the time that I would like. Sometimes I have to leave the
Mhm.
house. I mean, it's sometimes it sucks. Like I don't
Mhm.
want to have to leave them, but like I know that if I'm not well slept, or I'm not well fed, or I'm not taking care of myself, I am not the best mom,
Mhm.
for sure. So,
Yeah,
okay.
and the same is true for, like, women-centered professions, right? I mean,
Mhm.
speaking from education, and my work all day, every day is with educators and leaders now, like, that culture of self-sacrifice is so alive and well in education. I would say probably in healthcare too,
Sure.
where you're not a good teacher if you're not giving every single ounce of yourself to this job.
Mhm.
In fact, a fun little fact I learned about teachers recently, which so speaks to like when we talk about patriarchy being like this historical thing we've inherited. So back in the early 1900s, to become a teacher, you had to go to normal school. And going to normal, only women could do that, obviously, because that was a woman's work. And to go to normal school, you had to sign an agreement that basically said you would never have children of your own. You would never date. You couldn't even date, let alone get
What?
married, because you had to commit your life to caring for these other children. So to
Wow.
pretend that those kinds of mindsets and ways of thinking aren't still floating around in the ether of education, like it wasn't that long ago that it became more of a diversified profession. And it still isn't. It's still 70% of teachers are women, whereas like 70% of leaders are men, which is a whole nother
Mhm.
thing. But these structural things still exist.
Mhm.
And that self sacrifice is still very much baked into our society, just like women in the marital context were men's property. So you are
Yes.
meant to be basically like an employee of the man who's like the CEO of the household.
Mhm.
So you don't get to just choose to take a break. Like,
Mhm.
did you get approved for that? You know,
Mhm.
all of that
Mhm.
stuff is like why I think we feel so much guilt and so much shame, I think, especially as women,
Mhm.
in just caring for ourselves so that we can show up for others.
Yeah. Well, and that's like there's historical trauma, like intergenerational trauma too, that we pass down. And so
Mm-hmm.
some of that like could be part of that speaks to those previous ways of our women in our family line being treated, right? That gets passed down, and it's like nuanced sometimes. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
so in your face that it's like
Mm-hmm.
subtle. You don't notice it, and you just think like, oh yeah, that's just what it's like, or that's like
Mm-hmm.
what women do, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah. And I think sometimes like I was uber independent. Like nobody could help me with anything. I did everything just like myself. And then when I met my husband, I remember he was like, the trash was full and he was like, where are your trash cans? And I was like, oh, I can get it. I was like in the middle of cooking dinner. And he was
Mm-hmm.
like, he's like, no, that's not what I asked. What I asked was, where are your trash cans? And I was like, I've got it. And he was like, you're cooking. I can take the trash out. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay. And like, but it was like, I remember that being like so weird. Like, why are you fighting back? Like I said, I could do it. And like, but
Mm-hmm.
he was like, cause you don't need to, like, this is silly. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think that was a whole new like perspective for me to be like, oh, we can like all contribute to this. It's not like I'm the woman, I'm going to take care of the whole house or whatever. And excuse me. So I think, yeah, thinking about that speaks to me of like the balance and the patriarchy and the systems that
Mm-hmm.
are passed down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's talk about again, like well-meaning people, well-meaning parents. We sometimes we want our kids to like we'll talk about like them being like little adults.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that kids like from a psychological perspective are not little adults. They're children.
Mm-hmm.
But how can we tell the difference between guiding them like to help them become good contributing members to society, right? Like this good
Mm-hmm.
part, but like happy, healthy, well-adjusted contributing members to society. That's what I have in my head as to what I want from my kids.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say this is one where I'm like, my education lens is going to come in big
Yeah,
time.
please.
My area of expertise, like just to give a quick background, like I was a teacher for many, many years, was an educational leader, but my area of expertise is assessment and grading, which sounds not sexy at all. I totally get that. But
Mhm.
what I love in this work is transforming from in our school spaces, how am I just making you comply with the things I'm telling you to do, which is what traditional assessment and grading do in the school
Yes.
space,
Uh-huh.
to creating a culture of learning where we are guiding you to become an adaptive learner for the future. Like
Yes.
those are two very different cultures. And like luckily, this is probably one of the biggest areas of research in education. And I think I'm glad we're having this conversation. There's so many parallels and overlaps between the shift going on in a lot of K-12 schools right now and even
Mm-hmm.
universities. And I think things that parents would find so helpful for this question about how do I guide rather than kind of tell and shape.
Yes.
And it really comes down to first and foremost, you need clear criteria for whatever it is, the context in which you are hoping to change behavior. So I think I'm sitting in my kitchen right now. So that's what comes to mind. Most of my fights with my parents growing up were like little things like the kitchen. They wanted us
Mm-hmm.
to clean the kitchen more frequently and they didn't like how we clean the kitchen. And then it'd be like, you're lazy, you're doing it wrong, and then comes the telling and all the gross stuff. So you would start with like, okay, what are the criteria when we talk about doing the chore of cleaning the kitchen? Well, there would be make sure all of the dishes are in the dishwasher, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about cleaning all surfaces, including the floor and the countertops. Um, Maybe starting the dishwasher every night is a criteria, what it is, and whatever. But you want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure in those criteria that there is a little room for subjectivity. So talk about, clean countertops. Well, that could be really subjective. Like me and my
Mm-hmm.
partner fight about this all the time. I consider a clean countertop getting a rag with super hot soapy water and like scrubbing it down until it's sparkling. He would believe you could grab a paper towel and just pick the food off and the counter is clean. Both
Mm-hmm.
technically right, but
Mm-hmm.
now we're in a position where who's right and who's wrong. So when
Yeah.
it comes to trying to grow a habit in children to learn, the number one thing we could do as feedback, especially if they fall short of the criteria, the expectations in any given context, is ask a question. And it feels so counterintuitive to what the word feedback, because we've all been so conditioned in our life that if someone says, hey, can I give you some feedback? We know we're about to get a critique on the other end of that. Like if your boss comes up to you and says, do you have a minute for some feedback? You don't feel excited for that conversation. You're like, oh shit, what did I do wrong? So feedback in all the literature around it that is most effective is when it's put back on the learner in any given situation, a child or a student, to think of what the next step might be. And the more they can be constantly conditioned to looking at criteria and thinking about what their next step might be, and that's where some coaching and guidance come in if warranted. That's how you start to shift into like you are guiding a learner who is emerging in their own ways. And the truth be told, when we default to a habit of telling or shaping, as you named it, we are operating on the like presupposition that they're not going to do it the way we want them to. So we have to get ahead of it, correct it. When you step back and you ask more questions and you guide instead, and we've seen this in schools a million times, the kids often move in the direction you want them to anyways. And then you go, wow. And then you're in awe of them. You are keeping on like just the noticing and naming of the great things they're doing. And then it totally shifts the dynamic between the two of you. You know, it's no longer like a deficit space. It's a like positive space. It's a affirming space. And the more that cycle continues, so clear criteria, asking questions, being amazed at the direction that they're growing in, the healthier the relationship becomes. And then ultimately you have adult kids who probably want to hang out with you, which I think is the ultimate hallmark of this relationship really being developed well in childhood.
Yes, totally. Okay. So when you talk about clear objectives, does that mean cause like in our house, like we have the kids have different chores that they do. Tell me about like, is it like writing it down? Like what are the ways, what are we going to have the most success with? So is it like we walk them through it? I have a lot of ADHD kids, especially in my house. And so remembering is also hard, but I'm just like thinking like, I want them to be successful because when they're successful, it allows me that opportunity to celebrate them. So tell me how to do this well.
Yeah, write it down. Absolutely. And not only write it down, and breaking it into chunks is really helpful. So like I said, if you're talking about cleaning a kitchen, this is super nerdy and like technical, but you could do this holistically, which is how we typically judge things like on a snap decision. Like this is an assessment thing. Like you would say, oh, it was a clean kitchen versus it's still a messy kitchen. Versus when we're being more analytic about it, you take it apart into all of its parts. So what's the criteria with the dishwasher? What's the criteria with the counters and the floor? What's the criteria with the garbage? What's the criteria for efficiency, like the duration that it takes? Like there's a lot of different factors that you could bring into the conversation. And so the key thing is write it down for sure. And once you have a draft, it's always a draft. And ChatGPT is an amazing tool for this. It is literally changing the game in assessment right now because it can analyze a bunch of information and tell you, here's some draft criteria to work off of. Then the second thing you want to do is what's called calibration. So put a model of maybe you half clean the kitchen one time and you bring your kids in with those criteria and you say, okay, on a scale of 4, 3, 2, or 1, how much did I meet this criteria? Why or why not? So now you're getting them thinking and internalizing what those criteria mean. And then you have a chance to respond to them with like, really, it's interesting that you think the counter's clean because I still see, like if you have to kind of kneel down so you get the light glare, but do you see that streak on the countertop? I would still consider that dirty. And they'd be like, oh, I never noticed that before. Right. So it's just an opportunity for like co-regulation basically. And so once you've done that, then when they do the kitchen, then they've internalized those criteria. So then they can self-assess against them and say, did I meet these or not? And now we're talking about something really trivial, like cleaning a kitchen, but you could pull criteria for how you navigate conflict as a family. You could create criteria for homework. We all know evenings and homework is a battle as kids start moving up into grade school. You could navigate criteria for decision making. So if they want to make a decision about something, what are some criteria that you both want to agree to so that you can learn to trust their decision making? Like there's so many different things that you could start to mine down into. I mean, the most valuable things right now in education, and so I'll share it with any parents listening, we call them the competencies. So if you want kids to be highly adaptable learners in any given situation, you want to focus, I mean, the four that everyone can remember are the four C's. So collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking.
Mm.
You can break down even basic draft criteria that you as a family agree upon, and that's how you want to show up. Then you have the ability to move from like, you shouldn't have done that, you should have done this, why do you always act like that, you need to be doing this, and say,
Mhm.
okay, this was an opportunity for communication. How did that go?
Mhm.
You've got criteria, they've internalized this is all, and this is why I get so fired up about my work, and people don't believe me when I say assessment's sexy. It's like, it's actually like, it's the heart of how we learn
Mhm.
and grow and heal in many ways in our relationships and in societies. Clear criteria, calibration, and then really great conversation and dialogue around it.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I agree. I mean, it's hard to be successful. I mean, you can still be successful potentially, but it's maybe more random if you don't know what you're looking for, right? Like
Mhm, mhm,
I think, like we were talking about a dinner that's coming up at our house. That's a big dinner. And so I said to my husband, like, I was imagining that we were going to cook this. What did you think for sides? Right. So if we're not
mhm.
talking about it, and like, I know the things that he likes, I know the things that our kids like, I know the things that our guests will like, or at least some of them. And so it's like, but if I don't know what the expectation is, I'm not going to meet the criteria, right? Like, what
Exactly,
did everybody want, right? So it's
exactly.
even happening on a daily basis. I mean, I think we probably do this hundreds of times a day,
Mhm.
where we were
Constantly.
either, yes, thrilled or disappointed or mediocre with what happened. And I
Mhm,
think, yeah, I can see how this could be totally used in sibling conflict. This could be
mhm.
used. I mean, I love it in chores because I think I like kids grading themselves too. I find that sometimes they're harder on themselves than I would be, right? Like, and
Mhm.
then
Yep, that's true in the
sometimes they're
research.
not. But I think that at least my kids are harder on themselves. Like when I have them,
Yeah.
like one of my daughters has to break down boxes, which sometimes we have several of, and then sometimes we'll have none of, right? And like
Mhm.
she'll leave like pieces of paper or, whatever it is, like in this room where we'll put the boxes until she breaks them down. And and then I'll be like, how did you do with that? And she's like, this looks terrible, I didn't even notice all the stuff on the floor. I'm like,
Yeah, you're like, "Oh."
okay, like, yeah. Or sometimes, my other daughter is like, oh, it looks great, and she's like sweeping the things into the
Mhm.
corner, like
Mhm.
you won't notice that big pile of stuff that's there. But I
Mhm.
think every kid is so different. But I think having the criteria, that totally makes sense to me and can help our
Mhm.
kids to be so much more successful, because then if they know exactly what we're looking for, then most kids, I mean, I think most people want to succeed. And then I like the idea of asking the questions. Like, so can you give some, like, I know we were on the kitchen cleaning part. Could you give some more questions that somebody might ask that would be neutral in terms of like what we're
Mm.
trying to do to maybe help the kid be successful? So like we look at the kitchen,
Yeah.
they know what the criteria are. We're like looking to see if it's done well, and we're noticing like there's some places that we did not finish our job.
Yeah, I
How
mean,
can
there's,
we?
like you said, there's really pointed questions around specific elements of the task. Like,
Hmm.
you look into your daughter and be like, "How does the floor look?" You know,
Yes.
and they're like, "Oh, I never noticed."
Yes.
But the more generic questions, I'm gonna pull from the work of Adam Grant here. I'm not
Oh
sure if
yeah.
you're familiar.
Yes.
Yeah, he
Hmm.
wrote a book. For anyone who doesn't know, he's an organizational psychologist out of Wharton School of Business, I think at University of Pennsylvania. But he wrote an incredible book called Think Again. It's one I cite in my work all of the time in doing like educational leadership transformation work. And he cites a ton of research in psychology where he says the only person who can change our minds is us.
Hmm.
So if we're trying to ask the kind of question, or if we're trying to go in when we already know the answer, we know when someone's asking a leading question.
Hmm.
We know, and even at a young age, they know, but the tone and the energy behind it, it's like,
Sure.
oh, you're asking a question that actually is an answer. Like, it's not even really a question. So he argues for big, open ended, like how or why questions,
Hmm.
that make the person have to explain their process or rationale.
Mhm.
And in the process of doing so, realize how ill-informed or wrong they've been.
Mhm.
But here's the thing about that work, because he calls it like motivational interviewing. So you'd be like, well, how did you approach this? Walk me through the counters.
Mhm.
Why did you choose to do it this way?
Mhm.
And the thing that happens though, when we're confronted with questions like that, is even if in our minds we're scrambling and we don't actually have a very good answer, and we're kind of like, oh God. We've all been there, right? Like, that moment where
Mhm.
you've just learned a little bit about something and you go to like a dinner party and you're all excited and talking about it, and someone asks a really genuine, open-ended question like that, and you're kind of like, I've never considered that. You're
Yeah.
immediately like, why did I bring this topic up? I'm such a moron. I actually don't know much about it. You
Yeah.
want them to have that internal moment of like, oh crap. And because kids and parents, there's a whole dynamic there. They may or may not show you in that moment that they're
Mhm.
like, I actually don't know what I'm doing here. Or
Mhm.
they might say, I actually don't really know what I'm doing. Like, I struggled. I didn't really do much. I didn't know what to do. They might
Mhm.
reveal that. And then it's an opportunity for like authentic guidance and mentorship. Or they might not, and they might go sit on it and they might reflect on it. And then they go on the internet and then they Google how to better clean counters or like whatever, right?
Mhm.
Or if a bigger scenario, no, like how to not be an asshole in conversations, because they realize that like they don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then the next time they show up, it's going to be a little bit better. But big open-ended questions like what makes you say that, or how did you approach this, or
Mhm.
why did you do things this way, are good for people to like reflect on their own rationale and process and
Yeah.
realize that they might not actually have a lot. This is great for really charged political conversations, by the way, too.
Yes, totally. Yep.
Yeah,
I can
what
see
makes
that
you
being.
say that? No, like, how did you arrive at that conclusion?
Yeah, and then silence.
Most of the time, they're
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I heard someone say it online that I thought was cool.
Yeah. It seemed to make sense at the time. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. No, that's really great advice, because I think sometimes, I think when we're promoting this relationship, we don't want to come in emotionally charged to that. Like, we
Yeah.
just want the kitchen clean, or we'd like
Mhm.
their homework done, or we'd like them to put their backpack away, or we'd like them to talk to us about things. And so, but all of those things are teaching them how we handle situations and allow them to open up to us or not. And so I think the
Mhm.
connection part, by communicating well, it allows that connection to be deep.
Yeah. And if I could add something here, and this is a really
Yes.
critical challenge that we're having in the school spaces right now. And I think it's kind of emerging here, which I never thought about it in like a parent family dynamic, but we're talking about cleaning the kitchen just as because I'm
Mhm.
sitting in it. So it came to mind. But the more that we can become task neutral in the criteria that we create, the better the feedback will be. So back to this idea of these 4 competencies we talked about, right? Let's say that we are really focused this month as a family on critical thinking. People love that phrase right now. It gets thrown around a lot. Everyone thinks they're a
Mhm.
critical thinker. Not a lot of people can define it for you if you ask.
Mhm.
But anyways, you've defined as a family what critical thinking looks like. You've got kind of 5 key criteria that you're working on. Now, it's one of your kids' night to clean the kitchen. If you ask questions about how their critical thinking was demonstrated in that task of cleaning the kitchen, you're going to get a
Mhm.
much more sophisticated conversation, and you're
Sure.
going to get much more sophisticated evidence of how they approach that task. And then you're having a more meaningful conversation about why we engage in lots of things that we do in life. Well, we're growing our ability to become critical thinkers in any given little task, even like cleaning a kitchen. You're going to have the opportunity to make decisions and to weigh different options and to make
Mhm.
choices. And your
Mhm.
ability to get better at that is going to make you able to tackle any task, like really big tasks, really
Mhm.
crazy, scary tasks. But we can practice it even into something acute as like cleaning a kitchen. So I think
Yeah.
it's really important to think about what are those bigger things that you really want to cultivate in your kids that go
Mhm.
beyond just clean the kitchen, do your homework, clean your room. Like this is the same crap
Mhm.
we're dealing with in schools, right? Sit down, be quiet, do your work, hand it in on time, pass the
Mhm.
test. That's not really what it's about.
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
sit down with any teacher, they're going to tell you, no, I want kids who are creative, who are collaborators, who communicate truthfully and but kindly, and they'll say these things, and then they'll award points for showing up on time. They'll award points for being quiet in class. They'll award points for helping to go get some Kleenex boxes from the office. So what we give our attention to as adults with kids is what they're going to learn to value.
Yes.
So if you're going to spend time in these dialogues and set up criteria, pick the things that you really, really value as a parent. Don't pick the little tasks that you're asking people to engage in. We lose the value in those moments.
Yeah. And I think, and this is like a totally different way to look at parenting, right? Like this is different than, at least the way I was raised, right? Is like, do what I say. Just do it, like get it done. Right. Like, and I mean, there are times that my parents were not, taskmasters, but like, I think, it was just like, I ask you to do that. So do it. And sometimes I mean, the parent, I find myself sometimes I'll like on a really exhausting day when I haven't had good self-care, I might default to that task. Like just get it done. Right.
Just do it. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not really what I want. Right. And so like normally I notice and I'm like, hold on, I didn't show up well to that. Can I get a review? But I think, just noticing that like the hard work that you put in, like I am imagining how well this can work. Right. And the outcomes that we get are going to be so much better. And we're going to all feel good. And I love celebrating my kids. Like just when they have success and they have done a good job, they also feel really good about it. Like thinking about critical thinking the other day, my son, so we asked the kids to put their dishes in the sink when they're done. And so my son, who's 3, said to me, he goes, Mommy, I dumped my plate in the trash and then I sat on the counter because I did not want to break the plate. That would be really sad. So I sat it on the counter because I couldn't reach in far enough to the sink. And I was like,
and if you just saw it sitting on the counter, you'd be like,
what the heck? Yeah, exactly. But it was like, normally we don't give him the glass plates, but I had on that day. And so he was like, I was like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Like that you thought that far into it. I'm so proud of you. But like, those are the things, but we don't always like ask the questions. We're not as curious about like, tell me about this plate on the counter. Right?
Exactly.
Like, I'm curious about
why is this here?
Yeah. And then you get way more information versus being like, just put it in the sink. And he was doing something really thoughtful.
Exactly. What an opportunity to be able to like acknowledge that. And something to say to folks listening that's so important to note here that comes from the research. And I've also like lived experience of putting this method of assessment into practice in schools. In the short term, it's going to look like your feedback, because these conversations are actually feedback. Like that's it at its best. It's going to look like it's not working in the very acute short term. So it is not your like taskmaster, you're going to change something immediately type of feedback.
Yeah.
But the exponential effect we see is so significant. Like, if a teacher only did it once or twice in a classroom, they'd probably abandon it if they're looking for that immediate impact. But teachers who have committed for a whole year, we've seen classes in schools like raise test scores by 30% in 1 year. Like we've seen insane results, but you have to trust that it's going to take more time, because what you're trying, it's actually a transferability problem we're trying to solve. So you want your kid to make thoughtful choices when they're cleaning the kitchen, and also when they're, becoming a teenager and going to parties with friends. Like these are 2 very different situations. So we need some kind of criteria that can actually collapse over multiple different situations. Otherwise, what ends up happening is like our brains can't organize these things into any type of schema. And then it just feels like you've got a parent who's like always telling you you're doing things wrong. But what we know as adults, like, no, I'm trying to help you become a more just thoughtful decision maker. That's but if we haven't clarified that and we haven't unpacked it and then named it across multiple scenarios, we don't get that like beautiful payoff of like a long-term exponential effect on learning.
So how do we do that? How do parents translate the stuff that they're teaching their 9-year-old about cleaning the kitchen to their 15-year-old going to parties? Like how does that translate? How do you?
Yeah. We found that there is like if you're sticking to like a competency-based type of lens, so you're looking at these overarching transferable skills. So like we've said, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, all of that. You could probably, for if your kid's like up until about like fourth grade in terms of age, you'd want to have very kind of simple, almost observable criteria. And I mean, younger, like kindergarten, grade 1 age, you might even just use pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but you could use the same big concepts. As they get from grades like 5 through 8, you might now change the language a little bit and it becomes a little bit more sophisticated. As you get in grades 9 through 12, then the language gets a little bit more sophisticated. And to all parents, I would say you don't have to have like an education degree or even a master's or an ed.d to be able to do this. Like, you just need to jump on ChatGPT. There are so many resources on the internet that if you ask it, like, the hardest question is more sit down with your partner and say, what do we really value as a family? Like, what are the core skills? If our kids left at 18 and these skills were just deeply embedded in them as human beings, we'd feel like check. Like, we did our job as parents. And once you've decided on like a handful of them, like 3 to 5 is honestly a great number, then go to ChatGPT and say, analyze the global research around name the skill. Like, what are, for this age bracket, like say, you know, up until 8 years old, are the kinds of criteria that would show me my child is developing these skills, and just start from there and then ask for the next age bracket and the next age bracket. But we found that you can cluster them between like, in the school dynamic, kind of like your primary years, your middle school years, and your high school years. And typically, and there's a lot of stuff out there that ChatGPT would pull from for this, we see like a very observable in the younger years. It becomes more inner focused in the middle years. So I'm really focused on me and a little bit more, because their metacognitive abilities are developing at this time, so they can think about their own thinking a bit more. And then in high school is where they can really start to conceptualize the concept that their actions impact other people. So you can really start using language that's more like impact focused. They can't really grasp it as well in middle school, but the criteria would often be like just naming more specifically like what they're doing and how they're showing up. And then it's more community oriented as we get into high school. But again, ChatGPT, any generative AI is your best friend for this. It's so
good. I love that. There's so many ways. Yeah. That I feel like I am getting a quicker hack. Like, things, I don't have to spend so much time doing things, even in my practice, where it's like, make me a list of this, like 50 positive cognitions about this thing and whatever. I just like love it. It helps me. Yeah. Okay. So what do you think it looks like when a kid grows up feeling fully safe to be themselves, like emotionally, relationally, and internally?
Oh man, like in terms of the parent-child.
Yeah. Like what? Yeah. Yeah. Or I mean, like, yes, that's really what I want to know. But can you answer that?
I mean, I think I said this before, but to circle back to it, I feel like the ultimate hallmark of really raising a child like that is they want to hang out with you as an adult. Like, they genuinely want to spend time with you. It's been really healing for me. My current partner I'm with, I went through a big divorce like 3 years ago. But my current partner is 19 years older than me. So he's quite a bit older. He has adult children. So it's been fascinating because my family dynamic has been always kind of like a business relationship. And it was a very, you know, there were expectations and rules. And so it's not one I like, it's like, you kind of do it because it's like, oh yeah, I got to do the like forced family fun. Let's go do that. But his kids genuinely love being around him. Like, they're over here all the time. And the way he is with them, like, because I mean, he's also an assessment expert as well. But like, the way he asks questions and the way he just lets them live their lives. And then the human beings they've become as a result, like just the total self-assuredness, the unconditional way that he loves them even to this day. And like, they get so emotional, like talking about him, even when I'm around, like that he's just both the parents did everything for them. Like, but it wasn't in like a self-sacrificing way. It was just like a unconditional, you're exactly perfect as you are. And like, I told him the first time I saw him like talking to his daughter, I was like, wait, what? Where's the shame? Where's the guilt? What's she doing wrong? Don't you have a different plan for her? Don't you want to point out the holes? And he's just like, why would I do that? Why would she ever want to be around me if I was that kind of a person? And I was like, oh,
yeah, that's beautiful.
So for me, that's the ultimate sign. I was like, oh, this is very different.
Yes, totally. And just so amazing. And to see that relationship has to be so beautiful, and like what it looks like with them on the like adult side of things. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt for a second, Bryce.
Yes.
I should have mentioned I am a hard out in 5 minutes. I have to
Okay.
to a facial.
Yes, of course. No, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you let's talk about like for adults who realize that they have abandoned parts of themselves for like to
Mhm.
be this like good person or good girl. How can
Mhm.
they use parenting maybe as like a healing opportunity versus
Mm.
repeating the past experiences
Yeah.
they've had?
I think you named a beautiful little micro moment earlier in our conversation when you said, like, when your daughter is emotionally dysregulated, you're able to notice that as a call for you to practice your regulation as well.
Mhm.
Um, but I think you can't get to that place until there's some basic awareness that we all have inner work to do.
Yeah.
That just because you are older and have lived more years on this earth doesn't mean that you are more emotionally mature or
Yeah, so true.
more regulated. And so I think there has to be an awareness that we all have inner work to do and that you're constantly working on that. You're trying to notice your patterns, you're trying to name your patterns, but you're not wearing them like a label and using it again, like this phrase I used for opting out. I see a lot of that in culture today, like people being like, doing a quick online survey about ADHD and then being like, well, I can't do that because I have ADHD. It's like,
Mhm.
no, it doesn't give you, it gives you context and it gives you
Mhm.
some level of understanding. Now, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Like, what changes are you going to make? Like what you need to come out to a place where you're able to be like, I feel like the ultimate sign for any of us that we're really getting there. We're never going to be perfect. Like, I think we just have to let
Mhm.
go of that. But we're getting
Yeah.
there is we're a lot less triggered by the day-to-day crap going on around us.
Mhm.
And as a parent,
Mm.
things your kids do, if you're constantly triggered by it, you
Yeah.
got shit to do because they're reflecting something back to you that you're not facing, which is why you're now flipping it and placing it
Mhm.
back on them. So if you haven't let go of this idea that you're checking the boxes and you're trying to be good by societal standards, of course, every time your child does something antisocial, you're going to erupt
Mhm.
because this for you now feels like a offense
Mhm.
on this perfection that you're chasing, which we all know is not true anyways. So
Yeah.
that's more to do with you than them.
Yes, totally. I mean, you're exactly
Meant
right.
to be messy and
Mhm.
make mistakes and a little bit loud at times. And like, yeah, they can absolutely learn like social cultural norms for sure. But if it's just unraveling you. Like, I'll
Mhm.
see sometimes parents out in public and be like, "Oh my god, these poor kids." The parents just screaming at them and
Mhm.
just and you're like, "Okay." All you ever see in those moments is like, you need to do something, even
Mhm.
if it's just reading a book. Like, I know therapy can be really inaccessible and
Sure.
expensive
Yeah.
for a lot of people, but I mean, apparently the number one use of ChatGPT these days is therapy because it actually is a democratization of like the psychological research and knowledge we have. So
Sure.
there are tools available. So just we
Yeah.
should always be doing the work and trying to notice and name and be
Mhm.
better.
Yeah. Well, and I think I really think that parents do the best that they can, but I think I did an interview and one of the person that I was interviewing was like, but when you know better, you should do better. And I totally agree with that. Like that
Mhm.
we can learn and that
Mhm.
we can grow and that we can do better. So that doesn't mean that's not bad, but it's like none of us are going to be perfect or to like the end, right? Like we accomplish all of our goals or whatever it is that like we become that
Mhm.
perfect person. And so, yeah, it's okay to not be perfect on that. Okay. So let's end with, if you could offer one thing for parents in terms of like how they could grow their children into adults who trust themselves, what would that be?
Mhm. Mm. I think I'm actually going to offer them to stick with this theme of questioning that we've been playing with today. I'm going to offer them 3 questions for themselves.
Okay.
These are questions that they can journal on, they can just reflect on, think about, but really give some space and time to. I think the first one should always be, what stories am I telling myself about how I'm falling short as a parent?
Mm. Mhm.
And I choose the word stories there very intentionally because every thought we have is just a fiction, basically. It's like a half-formed sense of reality based on limited information that we have. So what stories am I telling myself about how I'm falling short as a parent? Write them all out. Next, who told me those stories in the first place? Like, where did I learn them?
Mm-hmm.
And then this is a question I always use that I borrowed from Adam Grant. What evidence might prove I'm wrong? The keyword there is might. So just brainstorming even possible evidence that would counter that story in your own life, even if it's not necessarily true yet, but it's like hypothetical evidence you'd be open to, will actually prime your brain to see more of it. So just by going through that thought process and then opening up a space where we can receive different evidence, we can start to let go of those narratives that are making us feel that we're not good enough.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Natalie. This has been such a great conversation.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, Bryce.
I hope that today's conversation with Natalie has been as meaningful to you as it was to me. I love this idea of doing an assessment to help our kids be successful, to lay out the expectations and have an assessment and to follow up and ask questions. This is something I'm going to be implementing in my own home, and I hope you will too. With that, I will say thank you so much for your time today. Please go ahead and subscribe on the platform you're listening to. We would love it. And it also gives you the opportunity to see our new episodes. It will let you know when new content is available. Also, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and keep the emails coming with future topic suggestions to accidentalexperts@gmail.com. Have a wonderful day. Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only. This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.